Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the situation with Joe Biden and the withdrawal from Afghanistan? Another question here is Joe Biden a good leader? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, consider supporting me on Patreon, and check out my podcast, Grande Media. I will put the relevant links in the description for this video. At the time of making this video, in August of 2021, the United States Armed Forces are withdrawing from Afghanistan in what has been a hectic, disorganized mess. The Taliban seized power at a staggering rate, probably even surprising themselves, as the Afghan security forces collapsed and the president of Afghanistan fled the country. The airport in Kabul has become the scene of surreal images of people crowding onto the runway, desperate to escape the terror of the Taliban. There are grave concerns about more people dying and about the rights of women, which almost certainly will be functionally eliminated by the Taliban. As the commander-in-chief, Joe Biden is responsible for what happened. He has received appropriate bipartisan backlash. Many people do agree that the United States needed to get out of Afghanistan and that Biden was in a tough spot because he had to honor agreements of the past. There's a lot of blame to go around as far as how the situation in Afghanistan has been handled. Every president involved has made mistakes. I don't think the withdrawal of military forces is what is making people so upset with Joe Biden. Rather, it's really about how he handled the withdrawal. His strategy of having people running to the airport in danger of losing their lives did not seem to be well thought out. This brings me to the question, was Joe Biden demonstrating leadership? There are a few items that speak to leadership that I will review here. 1. Instead of taking ownership of the problem, Biden has blamed just about everyone else. He said his advisors did not warn him of the situation, when in fact they did, although it may be true that there was some disagreement among the advisors. Biden blamed the president of Afghanistan for fleeing. Biden portrayed the Afghan security forces as incompetent. One could argue that he implied they were cowards. Biden seemed more fascinated with blaming the people of Afghanistan than helping them. He abandoned people who helped the United States, basically just telling them, tough luck. A key part of leadership is accepting responsibility. It is the only way to instill confidence. Biden simply can't view himself as the problem. He believes no one has the right to doubt his superior leadership qualities. 2. During the election, Joe Biden represented himself as a master of foreign policy. Ostensibly, this was one of the key reasons to select him over Donald Trump. Biden understood the complexities of the world, like trade, warfare, terrorism, finance, and other areas. It appears as though he tragically overestimated his own abilities, even to the point where he was on vacation as the military withdrawal was going on. He was so good at foreign policy, he didn't have to oversee a complex evacuation of Afghanistan. He's like the Bond movie villain that puts a lethal contraption in motion and doesn't even bother to see if James Bond was actually killed. If foreign policy is Joe Biden's strength, I wonder how he will perform in an area where he is weak. I think Biden equates hearing about foreign policy as being able to develop and implement it. Like competence is acquired magically. He can just get it by standing around and hearing people talk about various situations in different countries. I guess he attended the Sarah Palin School of Foreign Policy, like when she claimed to be proficient because she could see Russia from Alaska. 3. Biden has made some terrible, inaccurate predictions. Just weeks before the situation happened, Biden said, quote, "There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of an embassy of the United States in Afghanistan," unquote. This is an obvious reference to Saigon in 1975. Well, I guess in one way, Biden was right. Instead of people being lifted off the roof of an embassy, they were lifted from the landing pad next to the embassy. As if those words coming back at Biden aren't devastating enough, Biden said something else at that time. Quote, "The likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely," unquote. He should have just said the likelihood is low instead of the likelihood is highly unlikely. But that aside, there's a clear problem with his statement in that it was completely inaccurate. Maybe he can argue that the Taliban already owned the whole country, so they didn't have to take it over. they already had it. There is this sense with Joe Biden that he believes he has control over situations more than he actually does. He makes these bold predictions based on his imaginary power or abilities. 4. Biden seems to be dodging questions. When he does answer questions, he's either blaming somebody else or not making sense. There is this sense that he's indignant when somebody questions his authority or actions. How dare they want to report something about him in the media? 5. Biden has made it clear that completing the withdrawal depends on the cooperation of the Taliban, a group of extremists who regularly torture and murder people. This is the group that he's trusting. Next, he's going to be congratulating them for defeating the Afghan security forces. It makes no sense to consider the Taliban trustworthy. They are not on the side of the United States. 6. Biden appears to process information dichotomously, that is, in two distinct categories, not on a continuum. From his perspective, either the United States stayed in Afghanistan and spent hundreds of millions of dollars on a prolonged military conflict, or conducted a disastrous, poorly planned, ill-advised retreat that is an embarrassment to the United States and erodes its credibility. Planning a proper withdrawal from the country while protecting human rights was an option. He didn't have to go to one extreme or the other. 7. Biden does not appear to be empathic. He represents himself as someone who has empathy. He cares about human rights. He cares about people no matter who they are or where they are from. What about the people of Afghanistan? They are human beings. Biden doesn't seem to understand or care about that. Almost like they are to blame for their own situation, like he's mad at them for failing to resist the Taliban. Not long ago, Biden said, quote, "Look, let's put this thing in perspective here. What interest do we have in Afghanistan at this point with al-Qaeda gone?" Unquote. So a really cold and distant statement. He's talking about human beings that the United States is going to turn their back on. As a side note, he's wrong about al-Qaeda being eliminated, although their strength has been reduced. I'm not sure that Biden really understands how other people feel. He seems to be kind of in this tough guy moment where he wants to prove that he can put his foot down. With all these factors in mind, what are my thoughts on Joe Biden's leadership ability? I can appreciate that Joe Biden has trouble adjusting to being president. He doesn't like questions from reporters, probably because he doesn't have good answers. He doesn't like being held accountable. Foreign and domestic policy are more complicated than he originally imagined. Even still, he promoted himself as a leader. Unfortunately, the evidence doesn't support his assertion. Leadership is not arrogant, condescending, evasive, quick-tempered, hypersensitive to criticism, or defensive. I think the reality is that Joe Biden is simply the person who is in charge. That's different than being a leader. Many presidents who were poor leaders still did an okay job, so there is some hope. I just think it would be nice if someday the United States could actually have a quality leader, someone who truly pushes the politics to the side and tries to make good decisions based on logic, reason, and empathy. A president who can truly implement the will of the people. To Biden's credit, I think he does a much better job at hiding obvious flaws than some other presidents, but a hidden flaw is a flaw nonetheless. In a way, it's a little scarier. It's a hidden danger. You never know what's going to happen. You never know where the weakness is. I think the lesson learned here is to simply be aware of Biden's shortcomings, to know that he's not living up to all the self-promotion. The people of Afghanistan probably cannot count on Joe Biden to render any meaningful assistance or to genuinely care about their welfare. There's something worrisome about a person who is a poor leader who knows they are a poor leader. There's something terrifying about a poor leader who believes they are actually a good leader. Moving to the last question, will Joe Biden's behavior hurt him politically? Humanitarian issues rarely hurt U.S. presidents. Economic issues do. Biden will likely be able to move on from this catastrophe and continue to find new opportunities to wreak havoc. Those are my thoughts on Joe Biden's lack of leadership through the Afghanistan situation. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.